All right, Adam, we're out here. It's a beautiful day in Boulder, spring
really
practice number 13. And, you couldn't get much better than this, although the forecast for Saturday for the spring game does not look like this. But it's quite a day out here.
It's crazy. For like a 10-year stretch, it seemed like the weather was awful for every spring game. And then, I don't know, maybe it was 7-8 year stretch where it was perfect. And then now we're on the other end of it.
Yeah.
I was joking with some media members. It's like you walk up to a roulette table, it just seems off. It's, a bunch of red and then black followed up. And like, can we just kind of bounce back and forth, I think,
right.
year after year? But the forecast is slightly getting better. I don't think it's going to be quite as brutal as it was the previous 2 years.
Well, let's hope not. And I mean, the first year 2 years ago was actually kind of cool in hindsight, but with all the snow and everything. But man, that put a little bit of a damper on that spring game, I thought, with the snow. And then last year, rain's worse than snow. So I guess I'd rather have snow than rain. But we'll see. That's later on this week. We got to talk to both coordinators today. But before we get into that, the Buffs had some news last night announcing that on Saturday at the spring game, they're going to retire the jerseys, number 12 for Travis Hunter, number 2 for Shedeur Sanders. And your thoughts?
Well, I was just kind of surprised more at the timing of it than anything. It seemed like in a year from now, it wouldn't have the backlash that you're seeing with some former players on social media. And that's the part of it that's unfortunate, right? Because you can't really criticize the timing of this without it seeming like you're downplaying the impact that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders had around here. I don't think that even some of the former alumni that are frustrated, I don't think that's their intent. Yeah. Obviously, they both put Colorado on the national map here the last 2 years. But I don't even think you've renovated Legacy Hall yet, right? I mean, yeah. I think there's maybe the timing part of it more so than anything. But it was unbelievable covering both those guys during their time here. And so it's hard to talk about this because the last thing you want to do is say anything negative about what Shedeur and Travis right. did while they were here with the Colorado Buffaloes. I was surprised.
Yeah. Me too, and to me, this is a GOAT debate, right? And I hate GOAT debates because inevitably you have to put down someone who's really great to make your point to the guy that you think is the greatest, right? And so you can't talk about Michael Jordan being the greatest without downplaying LeBron James, and that to me is in this territory to where. Travis and Shedeur were fantastic, but I totally understand the perspective of these former players that I've heard from, on social media or whatever, that are upset about it because there's a lot of great players in the history of this program that don't have their numbers retired, and that made impacts. I mean, there's not a single person from the 1990 championship team that has a number retired. And, a Darian Hagan is a guy that, look, he didn't lose a conference game in 3 years, led him to a national title, was a Heisman finalist, things like that. His number's not retired. So that's right. I see the perspective of those former players is that, it's interesting timing. Also the fact that in the last year, a bunch of those retired numbers you've started letting people wear again, and now you're going to retire a couple numbers. So I think there's a lot of parts of it that are like, I don't know about this.
It's probably more for the number being up on the club suites, right? I mean, more so than because I mean that's one of the tricky things is you can't pull like a Boston Celtics in football and have all these retired numbers because you can't have duplicates out there. Yeah. And every time there is on special teams, it's annoying because the official has to announce it every time they come out there. Yeah. Aside from the point here, but if guys are able to wear those numbers, I guess then really the point's almost moot at this point. And at that point, maybe you retire some more numbers as well.
Well, I'm a Yankees fan, but I also they've got too many numbers retired. There's a point where there's too many. I actually like. We'll get to the coordinator soon in a second, but I actually like the fact that last year, when Preston Hodge wears Byron White's 24, the first player since Byron White to wear it, that there's a patch on there for Byron White. Yeah. Or when Khalil Benson wore Joe Romick 67, there was a Joe Romick patch. I love how they do it that way, and I hope they continue doing it. That's the way they should do it, because I think that highlights those players. So, when Preston Hodge makes a play, people see the patch. It can be on TV. Maybe it's a talking point on TV. Byron White's name. It should be mentioned because he's an all-time great. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, somebody wears 2 or 12. there should be a Travis Hunter or Shedeur Sanders patch on there, and where you can talk about those guys because their contributions, were huge. And so in that regard, I get it, but it's a tricky situation when you're retiring numbers.
Yeah, the focus should be on celebrating those two guys, right?
Yeah.
And not a controversy part of it.
Yeah.
That's a part of it that's unfortunate. But no, I think the outcries will kind of dissipate and people will accept it, and it won't be that big of a deal long term.
Well, and bottom line is the cool thing is the Saturday fans get a chance to celebrate those two guys, and they deserve to be celebrated by this program, and that's the bottom line is they deserve to be celebrated. So as far as going back to the football aspect, we did talk to the coordinators. Shedeur Sanders is no longer a player here, but Pat Shurmur talked about Shedeur's replacements today with Caden Salter, Julian Lewis, mentioned Ryan Staub as well. But it's clear that it's a two-man competition, isn't it? I mean, even Pat Shurmur, when he mentions Staub later on, talks about the two, and so it's clear that it's a two-man competition right now and that there's some talent there.
And we didn't expect there to be a quarterback announcement in terms of who the starter is coming out of spring ball. I think everybody just kind of assumed this would be something that would go into camp. Mm-hmm. And I think Pat Shurmur's comments today kind of fell in line with that, talking about how the best scenario for him would be that it's a coin flip at the end of the day. Now, if it's a coin flip, then Julian Lewis has come in and worked and really been mature beyond his years, because obviously we've talked about it. He should be a junior in high school right now. Yeah. If he can do that, that's great news for the future of Colorado football, because Caden Salter is a pretty proven commodity. I know it wasn't at the Power 4 level, but that was an undefeated Liberty team a couple years ago. Yeah. And I think you feel good about what he can do. So if Julian is indeed pushing him, and I think it will take him to reflect on spring ball, Julian, to go into the summer and really know how to attack things now that he's gotten his feet wet at this level with some practices under his belt. I agree. That would be the best case scenario. That we're still talking about this right up until when they really need to make a decision.
Well, and this is why I think it's important for a guy like Julian, whether it's, I know he's a year and a half earlier, but an early enrollee as a quarterback especially, to get in here for spring ball, because you're swimming a little bit in those 15 practices. Now you get to decompress a little bit after this and get ready, reevaluate, like you said, get ready for fall ball. I expect a better Julian Lewis in the fall than maybe, I don't even know how good he's looking right now, because we can go off of well off, but however he looks now, I expect a better version of him in the fall after he's able to evaluate and probably study his own film from this spring. And so that competition is going to be interesting. Coach Shurmur, he talked about, hey, bottom line, the goal is we just want to score touchdowns. We did it a certain way last year, and he always has a funny one-liner every time he talks. But he says, I don't care how we do it this year, whether it's passing it, running it, sending a text message, whatever it is. And so I don't know if they're going to, if text will get it done, but it could look a little bit different this year. But I think there's still some talent there.
Yeah, and if Caden Salter is your starting quarterback, I don't know how many times you want him getting hit, but he's so good as a runner that can really open up things. I feel like can take some of the pressure off that offensive line. If it's Julian, he can run more than he did in high school. He just had so much talent around him at Carrollton that he didn't really have to utilize his legs, and he didn't want to be taking hits. They're going to be better, I think, from just being multi-dimensional out of that quarterback, which should assist things. But certainly Shedeur Sanders was incredibly accurate, and so it's going to be tough to replace them. It's going to be a different look offense, but I think it can be very highly productive still. Yeah. And now we'll see what running back looks like coming out of the spring transfer window, because that's a need they have now. Yeah,
certainly a need with Isaiah Augusta going to the portal. Defense, it's going to look different as well. Coach Robert Livingston, our coordinator Robert Livingston, mentioned he joked with Bucky that it's like that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air scene where he's looking around saying, "Where is everybody?" There's going to be a lot of new faces on that defense, but you look at some guys there and you're like, ooh, I really like that guy. I like that guy. There's some guys that you really like on that defense.
They're so stout on the defensive line that you got to start there, right? Yeah. And then you move on to cornerback and a lot of the talent they have there, and then you wonder, okay, you feel good about a couple safeties. You got to get depth there. Linebacker, I really don't know what to think out of that group. Yeah. I like, the resumes of those guys that came on board. But maybe that's a position you got to try to add a piece as well.
Yeah, I would think so. To me, linebacker is that one spot I worry about right now. It's still very early, though, and we know they're going to add some people in the portal. So I want to reserve judgment on that group until we see what they got going in August. But, yeah, corner, we've talked about it. DJ McKinney, Colton Hood, Preston Hodge, R.J. Johnson's coming on this spring. So I feel good about the secondary and the defensive line.
Yeah, just the depth at safety, I think. And we didn't talk about edge. That's a group that's going to get quite a bit better when you get Keaton Wade and Samuel Okunlola back in there. They might look a little thin out there on Saturday spring game because those guys have been banged up. But that's another group that you feel really good about. It's an interesting team in the sense that there's a lot of reasons for optimism, but still, and this has been the case every year under Coach Prime because they have been so active in that spring transfer window that you've had these question marks, and maybe there's less question marks this year, but you're kind of slowly phasing out of that a little bit, but still a little depth issues here and there.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. There's a lot to like about this roster right now. There's a lot of things you look at and say I don't know yet, and so we're gonna see as they go along throughout the portal window, things like that. I'm looking forward to seeing it on Saturday. One other quick thing going back to offense is we've seen Cam Michael doing a little bit of running back in practice. Coach Shermer was pretty adamant that, no, he's a wideout for us.
Yeah, we'll see. His high school tape as a dual threat quarterback is really fun. If you haven't watched Cam Michael's senior highlight reel, I recommend doing that because he was pretty electric. I mean, he has got top end speed and is a guy that once he gets in the open field can be really hard to bring down. So that's maybe their plan is not to have that and have him play running back and to bring a transfer in there. But if you needed Cam Michael to be a running back in a pinch, I think he'd be a pretty good one.
Well, and we saw, I think it was Isaiah Harge last year run the ball. Maybe Cam Michael does that a little bit at the spring game this year. So we'll see. But, hey, it's tax day. Everybody get your taxes done, and we'll see you later on this week.